Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another flight. Yet again, we've got Drago with us. If you can't tell, we're doing these back to back. And this time, we're going to be flying from Crimea. Let me get back into the game here. We're going to be flying from Crimea. Oh, I forgot to say hi to Drago. Hi, Drago. Welcome back. Good to have you back. It's like you never left.
Great
what can I say?
Quite literally in this case.
Yeah, no, people advise me like not to say at the beginning of these talks and flights when it's recorded and the fact that we're recording them one after the other, but I don't care. Like I don't think the people care either. Let's see what happens when we click game. There we go. We are in the SU57 today, taking off on this grass runway somewhere in Crimea. I don't know why it put us on a grass runway. I'm pretty sure there should be a real runway here, but Microsoft Flight Sim is not always 100%. Flaps on, power up, brake off. Let's go outside view so you guys can see the beauty of this plane. And we're off. Full afterburner takeoff. Gear up.
Barrel roll.
Barrel roll, and let's point in the direction that we need to go. We're using this plane because the flight path that we have planned for today is actually quite long. And we're going from Crimea all the way to Belgorod. Okay, we're having some major frame drops, but that's the way life is. Let's get some altitude. Alright, this is Crimea, everybody. It is littered with air bases. And the purpose of today's flight is going to be a discussion with Drago about the impossibility of taking Crimea to start off with. This Crimea, it's nowhere near as small as it looks on the map. I'll tell you that. We are now, oh, hold on. Let's see if I can move myself a little bit here, so that you guys can see what's going on here. Here we go. All right. We are at about 19,000 feet, traveling at about 0.7 the speed of sound, and heading basically north. And we're gonna see that land bridge that connects Crimea to mainland former Ukraine. And Drago's gonna tell us about the history of that land bridge and how the no-no Germans back in the 40s had trouble taking over this very part of the world. Tell us a bit about that.
And I would say it's not even the Germans, I would say everyone, because, you know, Crimea is a peninsula in name only, essentially, because it's covered, it's surrounded by water on all sides except that specific land bridge. Of course, now we have the Crimean Bridge, which connects Crimea to southern Russia, but the thing is, for most of its history, it has actually been almost like an island. And it's one of the most defensible places in Europe. You know, it's extremely hard to take it over from anyone who controls it at that point. You know, because essentially you have to do a combined arms operation where you would have a naval force attacking the peninsula, and also like the land force, which is going to go through that land bridge. And that's basically a death sentence, because especially now, because, you know, we have all these high precision weapons, you know, high explosive weapons, which can destroy any force that is, you know, dumb enough to try that. And, you know, it's pretty ludicrous that the Ukrainians are saying they're going to take over Crimea when they couldn't even do it when they actually were bordering Crimea. And now they have two more areas, you know, between them and Crimea to take before they go to take Crimea. So, you know, all this like talk about the Crimea offensive and retaking Crimea, I really don't understand how they're gonna do it.
Well, one of the major obstacles that I see to that As you say, it's virtually an island. And right here in front of us, we can see the... Hold on, let me put up the map. Maybe we can see it on the map as well. Come on, little map. There you go. Yeah, you can see right here... Oh, you can't. Right here, you can see the... There's a bunch of, like, swampy marshland type area that is not conducive to heavy weapon movement. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, or any weapon movement except maybe jets and helicopters.
And even infantry will probably have a hard time going through all this stuff. And if I'm not mistaken, there's only like 3 or 4 actual road connections. Which means that there's bottlenecks galore.
Exactly. And also the southern area of the peninsula is mountainous, unlike the rest of the rest of the peninsula and most of like the Ukraine and the subcontinental area, which is all flat. So you would actually have like the defenders would have like multifaceted advantage, in trying to essentially push back the invaders, any potential invaders. So it's, I mean, I understand why Putin decided to retake Crimea in 2014 because it was like the best move he could do. It was, like then or never. Because, taking it now, like when the SMO started in 2022, it would have been a major problem, because it's a combined arms operation, as I said, and the defenders have a lot of advantages.
We're just flying over that area right now, and you can see that this is not really connected, to say the least.
Yeah, there's also this Crimea Canal, so essentially we could even say that now it's an island, like full-blown island, since the Soviet times.
Oh yeah, because they made that like passage, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to get below the cloud cover. We're flying at 1.4 times the speed of sound now. This is why we took the Felon. Is it that what it's called? The SU57
that's the NATO
Felon. Yeah. As opposed to the... What was the other one that we were going to take, but we decided not to because it was too slow?
Fulcrum.
MiG-29. 29, there you go. So we're back over mainland former Ukraine. I believe this is Zaporozhye region. And that conveniently brings us to nuclear terrorism. There's talk about, Ukrainian repeated shelling of the area of the nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. What do you have to say to that?
I just want to say that whoever is doing that is like either an idiot or insane or probably both. I really don't know because
possessed. I think the word you're looking for is possessed, man.
Yeah, possessed. Yeah, that's a good point. Possessed because there's no other explanation as to why would one try to blow up a nuclear power plant which they are very close to, because you don't want to create like Chernobyl ×3 or ×5. Also, most of the time the winds are blowing towards the west, so it's in all likelihood they would actually irradiate themselves, sooner than the Russians. So, pretty crazy what they're doing.
I don't know. I think it's like a scorched earth policy, because like they realize that they're not going to get that or any of the land anytime soon.
Yep.
Okay, flying this fast, this close to the ground is killing the frame rate, so we're gonna get some altitude. My PC is not built for recording, streaming, telegramming, and gaming at the same time, apparently. But we're trying. We're new at this. You can check out the Patreon.
PC is built for that.
No, there's some people, but like I got this PC upgraded like about a year ago, and I just figured, why not use it for something more than gaming, right? And then I started to be the working brother, basically. Check out the Patreon if you're new here. Like, share, subscribe. If you're a fan of flight sim stuff, I'm sorry, you found the wrong channel. This is the worst comedy channel on YouTube. We go flying sometimes. So this is the Dnipro River, and this lake that's here, or like this widened part of the Dnipro. The Soviets crossed the Dnipro a long time ago. What do you think the chances of the Russians crossing it sometime soon are? Or do you think that's not in their playbook?
Well, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. At least, I mean, for the time being, because first of all, they have to, you know, get all of like left bank Ukraine under their control, or the eastern part of Ukraine, in order to do that. Because you know, I'm sure most people remember when they were leaving that western or like right bank area of the Kherson Oblast, they actually did it because, you know, it's very hard to defend such a small area, and you have to transport all your logistics over the river. And all the bridges were destroyed, and they were being targeted, you know, by the Ukrainian forces. So that's why they actually pulled out of that area to, you know, reduce the casualties. So launching an operation now at this point would make no sense at all. So they would have to do it only after they secure the entire, you know, eastern part. So I don't think they're going to be going over the Dnieper anytime soon. However, I'm hearing all these claims by the Ukrainian side that they will be doing it, and for them it's equally suicidal. You know, it's equally hard. Because it's very, very easy to target boats and, you know, attempted cross pathways across such a big river, because, you know, you can only have, you know, so many of these logistics and transport vehicles that are amphibious and that can go over such big rivers. So it's a suicide for both sides. So, you know, that's why I think any sort of offensive by the Ukrainian side is going to be, it's doomed to fail, or at least like it could have a very, very limited success, and simply like the cost for that would be way too great.
And considering that basically the Dnipro is not crossable effectively, do you think the Russians will wait for some kind of political change on the other side of the Dnipro before they kind of pop over? Or do you think they're going to force Odessa and that area south of, like, the southern coast, let's say, of Ukraine anytime soon?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because there are very little, or should we say, there are no staging grounds suitable enough for such an operation. You know, as I said, like they would still have to, again, they would have to cross the southern southern stream of the Dnieper River. So, like, how are they going to do that without, you know, inducing a lot of casualties? I'm not sure. So, what I think they're going to be, they will continue doing is they will let the Ukrainians send, you know, additional endless waves of soldiers and forces into the Bakhmut and Donetsk area, where they will just destroy them and continue destroying them until the, you know, the Kiev regime just stops. Because at some point they will run out of men, or like they will run out of people willing to fight, or who knows, maybe the people will rebel against that, because, I mean, who wants to be sent to certain death for nothing?
Yeah. I'm just looking over here, and this frame rate is killing me. So I think we're gonna turn off the weather, because one of the good things about this game is you can play God and just have clear skies. I mean simulator. Did I say game? I mean simulator. Like, share, and subscribe. So now we're flying over that checkpoint where all the usual prison exchanges happen, actually. It's right here on the corner of this part of the Dnipro. The point is, This is the area where the Russians supposedly have built up a lot of new defenses, like a huge Wagner defensive line, and then there's that other something or another line. And then there's like a gap. There's like a little gap. And if you've seen the maps, I don't know, I've seen some of them. Defense Politics Asia and History Legends brought them up. I think also Military Summary did. But there's a little gap right above Mariupol, basically. Do you think it's a trap? Or do you think it's a mistake?
That was my... I don't think it's a mistake. Like, I don't think they would make such an obvious mistake, you know, for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is probably a trap because the Ukrainian forces, they would have to try to cut off this land bridge between Crimea and Zaporozhye Oblast and Kherson Oblast from Donetsk. And for them to be able to do that, they would have to like go straight towards Mariupol, or at least towards the Black Sea, or actually in this case the Azov Sea, which leaves them very vulnerable to air attacks, artillery attacks, and infantry attacks too, and armored assaults. So, you know, it would be a PR operation which would cost a lot of lives, and it wouldn't give, you know, some major advantage or anything. So I think I tend to believe it's a trap for them, and if they fall into it, they're doing it willingly because it's obvious they would know it too, that it's a trap. But I guess when you're leading a PR war, it doesn't matter.
Last flight that we did, we touched upon the 80,000 versus 200,000 Ukrainians. What do you think? What do you think is the use of them? Do you think they're going to be actually used for Bakhmut, or do you think it's like feint and they're going to go for Severodonetsk and or Donetsk itself?
Well, I mean, they've been trying to do that for over a year now, because most of the time, like, you know, people say that it was a Russian invasion and so on, but the Ukrainian army never stopped attacking Donetsk and trying to, you know, conduct these counteroffensive and offensive operations in the area. They never stopped doing that. It's just that the Russians decided to, you know, use that to their advantage and just, you know, destroy them piece by piece or piecemeal. You know, all these like assault forces, because when you attack, you would expose yourself to, you know, getting killed or wounded. So that's one of the reasons why the casualty ratio of the Ukrainian army is so bad, like 8 or 9 to 1 in comparison to the Russians. And I don't think it's a problem for the Russians that they are outnumbered, because the human factor is increasingly irrelevant in modern warfare. Not completely irrelevant, but like its importance is diminishing slowly but surely, because the Russians have the advantage in drones, in artillery, in air dominance, in missiles, in long-range missiles like the Caliber and the AH-101. So essentially, like, they have a complete technological and strategic advantage over the Ukrainians, which is the reason why they are comfortable with being outnumbered.
So basically, they picked hard setting. In the game analogy, like instead of nuking Kiev, they're just you know, using the least possible amount of troops and whatnot.
Resources. We could say forces or resources to inflict the maximum damage that they can with those deployed resources. I mean, it's, you know, it reminds me, like, it's almost the opposite of what the Soviet Union was doing during World War II. And it reminds me of the 19th century Russian army, when they had like these genius commanders like Kutuzov, for example, or before that, like in most of the 18th century, the Suvorov was a military genius. I think he was like one of the 7 generals who was never defeated in battle, even though he served like for 50 years or something like that. So essentially, it's such tactics are not uncommon, not uncommon for the Russian military, especially like in pre-Soviet times. So I guess this is what they're inspired by, and they're pretty much like very, very successful in it, I would say.
Everybody who's watching, we're currently flying over Donetsk Airport, and there's Avdiivka right around here, and that is where Donetsk is being shelled from daily for 8 years.
Yep.
And we're hooking a left and going a little bit north towards Artemovsk. I was about to say Bakhmut, but it is no longer Bakhmut. One of the reasons that I'm doing this flight for everybody who is still here with us is so that viewers who may not be familiar get a sense of scale of this front line, because we've been flying at minimum 1.5 speed of sound, 1.5 times the speed of sound, or Mach 1.5, 1.44. You can see it there in the corner. Depends on our altitude because of the air density. But the point is, yeah, there is a lot of front and a lot of Ukraine to see.
Yeah. It's not the largest country in Europe for nothing, so yeah.
Used to be.
Used to be, right.
Used to be. The point is that when it started, when this whole SMO started, one of the most amazing facts that blew my mind was when you look at the map of Ukraine and you measure the distance from the easternmost to the westernmost point of Ukraine. The distance is longer than the distance from the westernmost point of Ukraine to the easternmost point of France. So
right.
that'll put some things in perspective. We are reaching Artemovsk, I think, at 1.5 times the speed of sound as we were before, flying at around 6,000 feet, which in metric is what now? 6,000 feet divided by 3, around 2,000 meters?
Yeah, 2,000 meters or so.
Right. So, Artemovsk. Artemovsk is also, for those that might have missed it, our talk with Miodrag Zaric. We'll leave a link somewhere here. Artemovsk was a part, or Bakhmut was part of Slaviano-Serbsk, I think it's called, which was part of Ukraine back in the 1600s, 1700s, maybe late 1700s.
Yeah.
Where basically
late 1600s, early 1700s.
Go on. You probably know better than I do. Tell us.
I would just, essentially what you just said, because a lot of Serbs were fleeing the Turks and their beautiful empire that was extremely inclusive and tolerant towards everyone, especially Christians.
Yeah.
The Serbs couldn't stand all that tolerance, so they decided to go to this backward authoritarian Russia for some reason. I don't know why. And the Russian Empire essentially settled them, in this area of western part of the Donetsk Oblast and other areas across Ukraine, but especially in that area. And one of the reasons why there are no Serbs there is because they were probably integrated into the local population very fast, because it's essentially the same people. So,
or a very, very similar culture.
Yeah, very similar, like Orthodox Christianity, Slavs, and speaking a very similar language. So I guess the same would happen to many Russians or Ukrainians moving to Serbia, after not even 50 years, maybe even less.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at what I see and what it's recording, and it's two different worlds. I'm sorry, viewers. If anybody has suggestions on frame rates and bit rate settings and whatnot for OBS, leave them in the comments. I'm always open to suggestions. Also, tell us if you like this kind of content. This is, we are flying, I believe, we are flying past, Lysychansk. Is it? Somewhere here.
Yeah, I think it should be Lysychansk, or at least something close to it.
Mm-hmm. There's AI-generated aircraft, for those that may not know. This is an aircraft in the actual world, which has been generated into the sim. And I've seen some weird aircraft flying some weird positions. I think we're passing over Liman now, or that general area, the Liman front. What do you expect for that? Do you think the Russians are just... because I heard reports of, you know, Russians digging in that big forest that's there. And...
yeah, the area... Like,
go on.
What they're doing in those areas, all those areas with digging in and everything, it reminds me a lot of the Kursk battle in 1943, which was actually happening during the summer. It was very, very hot. It was like a very, very tough area to defend, because as we all know, like the Eastern Europe, or former Russia, former Soviet Union, whatever you want to call it, all this area is extremely flat. It has very few like natural defensive lines, except like rivers. The rivers are the only exception to that. But you don't have any mountains or even hills that you can use to your advantage. So it's extremely hard to defend. So I think in that regard, that would explain why the Russian military doctrine is so offensive, you know, like offensive oriented. Because like if you don't have any areas to defend effectively, what do? Well, you have to go on the offense until you reach an area which you can defend. Which is one of the reasons why the Red Army in World War II was so offensive oriented. But the thing is, because it's such a large area, you know, like you can't advance too fast, because if you create all pockets, you know, they could be surrounded. The forces in those pockets could get surrounded and destroyed easily. So you have to make incremental advances, otherwise you might fall into a trap.
All right, for viewers, we've sped up to Mach 2 times the speed of sound, which means we're flying pretty fast towards Kharkiv Oblast, where the huge, amazing Ukrainian counteroffensive took place last year, and Kharkiv city, where the Russians, quote-unquote, failed to take the city. Do you think the Russians ever wanted to take that city?
Yeah, no way. It's way too big. As far as I know, it's the second largest, or it was the second largest city in the country before the SMO. So, like, taking such a big city, which with a relatively small force, it's impossible without the population wanting you to take the city. So. And I think, you know, many people in Kharkov wanted that. However, what people forget is that the Ukrainian army was actually using civilians as meat shields, you know, and they were putting these air defense systems in backyards of people's houses, or very close to residential areas. And I've seen, you know, some military equipment, you know, which they were putting in children's like playgrounds. So, you know, they knew that the Russians will not target these areas, you know, so as not to cause any civilian casualties. So they use that to, you know, great effect. And, you know, the same happened to most areas that the Russians had to pull away from. And essentially, like, when the initial idea of deposing the government the Kiev regime failed, because of you know the AFU's usage of civilians as meat shields, then the Russians decided to go with Plan B, and that's the demilitarization of Ukraine through grinding down, you know, in areas such as Bakhmut.
I have to draw people's attention to this plane that we've got flying. This is another player in the sim, Yellow Blue Scout, and he's flying a Cessna 152 for the pilots, because I know I got some pilots in my channel who are subscribed. They'll know what a Cessna 152 is, and we can all recall that piece of news about that plane that flew over the border. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, apparently the guy had some even bombs and stuff like that strapped to the plane, and he made some rudimentary, like, let's say, hook that was used to, like, or like a stick that was used to drop these things. And apparently, even dropped the pilot even dropped some bombs. They didn't hit like anyone. Luckily nobody was hurt, but they found craters, bomb craters, and bomb remains in that specific area. And then the guy seemingly crashed, I guess, or crash landed, to be exact. And they also found, you know, personal weapons like the AK-74M rifle, which is military grade. So like he couldn't have actually, you know, went to a shop and bought the weapon.
Yeah, but if he's from Kiev. If he's from Kiev, he could have gotten it in that first, like, remember when they were handing them out like crazy?
Yeah. Exactly. They were giving out military-grade weapons, so, like, it's obvious that the guy...
Just for a second, I just want everybody to pay attention, like, here right in front of us. This is Kharkiv, and it is absolutely massive, as you can see. We're at 17,000 feet. So yeah, Kharkiv was not going to be taken by 20,000 Russian soldiers. And now we're going to go to Belgorod.
100,000 soldiers would have a problem, let alone 20,000, so yeah.
Yeah. We're going to go to Belgorod now, and I just wanted to draw people's attention to the fact that these two cities are extremely close, as we will discover very soon, and bring this flight to an end. Tell us, Drago, about the likelihood of Ukrainian attack in the Belgorod direction, because the Russians have built up some defenses there as well. And what do you think of the possibility of something like that happening?
Well, the Russians have pretty massive forces in that area, so I'm not sure like what kind of Ukrainian force would be able to match that, let alone like defeat them in a possible invasion or counter invasion or whatever you want to call it. So I highly doubt that's going to happen unless the Russians want to do another feint and try to destroy as many of these, you know, Ukrainian fighting capabilities as they can. So I doubt the situation is going to change there, especially because, as you said, like they're dug in. The Russians are dug in. They've created a lot of these defensive lines across the border, actually all the way from Belgorod and all the way to the Belarusian border. So, you know, how are they planning to do that? Like, I mean, the AFU, how are they planning to take anything in that area is beyond me at this point.
But wasn't there like an incursion the other week, like 2 weeks ago, maybe?
Yeah, there was an incursion. But like that's an incursion, and for them to make any solid advances, it would require massive forces, like at least 100,000 soldiers, which I'm not sure they have in that area at all.
The big question is Ukrainian casualties. That's something that's always in the back of everyone's mind, because it is like the determining factor to the beginning of the end of the conflict. Let's put it that way. Because you know, as soon as Ukraine gives up, the better for them. What do you think are the actual numbers as we come in for a landing here in Belgorod?
I've talked about it once on your channel before. Certainly, the numbers have changed in the last month, so they're worse for the AFU, definitely. However, what I would advise people to do, and I'm sure many of them have seen that, there are actually videos on Telegram, and there's a specific video of a guy who's an amputee, who's missing an index finger and middle finger, and they were what they did is they put some wire around his hand and connected it to the gun, so the guy can fire by pulling the wire
with his wrist,
back.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, what is risk? So I actually published it on my Telegram channel, and I'm like this image is very indicative of the casualty rates in the Ukrainian army. Like, why would you take amputees, and essentially forcibly conscript them if you have other people, that you can just, mobilize and draft and whatever and force into war? So that means that they're pretty desperate, I would say, for manpower, and I think they are on their last legs in this regard. Like, I don't believe they can muster more soldiers without them being like, I don't know, older people or women, or I don't know what else is there to mobilize, like kids, like 10-year-olds.
What were the German Jaeger? No, what are they called? The children's brigades?
Hitlerjugend.
Hitlerjugend. There you go. So we
Yeah,
need some
like, and that's gonna be a disaster. Like, that was right before Berlin fell, so it's it spells doom for the AFU as far as I'm concerned.
We have located the runway here in Belgorod. I believe this is also a military airport. Coming into land, 140, 150 knots. Full flaps. Stabilizing. And trying not to sink. Drago, thank you for stopping by. I think this
My
has
pleasure,
been,
as always.
I think this has been an interesting talk and flight. We'll call it a flight, but in reality the flight is just a visual background for people. Here we go. Touchdown in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Awesome. We have landed. Excellent. Thank you everyone for stopping by. It's been great. Let's get some music going. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Blackout. And goodbye, everyone.